Very good evening to everybody out there watching. We are going to have a very gala evening where we are going to celebrate the stories from the Northeast. We have with us Mamang Dai, an author who doesn't need any introduction. She is one of the best authors we have in India. And along with them, we have Subi, Taba, and Debarati, who are excellent contributors of the anthology called Where the Kingfisher Sings, a collection of short stories from the northeast of India. Beautiful stories which talk about the climate, the people, the places, the perceptions, the weapons, the culture, and many such things. The book is now available on Amazon and you can download it and read it at your leisure, a book that you must read to know more about the beautiful place which is spread across the 8 sisters, the northeastern states. Welcome Mamang, Subi and Debarati. I will go to Mamang first. My pleasure. I will go to Mamang first. Mamang, we would like to know from you how the Northeastern belt, its culture and the causes has reflected at various times in your stories. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Hello.
Mamang, how your stories have covered the Northeastern regions.
Actually, the sound is bouncing. I can only hear a little bit, of what you're saying. Could you just repeat that again, please, Kural?
Yes, we can hear you. So I'm just asking, how has your stories covered Northeast and the Northeastern causes?
My story?
Yes. Your stories, your writing, how did you cover Northeast in your stories, your writing?
Well, the Northeast, specifically Arunachal Pradesh, because I'm living here. So this figures, I think, very much in all my writings, poetry, novel, and this is the land itself is a kind of blueprint. It's the resource for what I write. It may not be an exact interpretation, but this is where I find, the freedom of writing. This is where I'm based, and this is where my work issues from, as it were. But first of all, Coral, I would also like to say, I would like to congratulate you for this Tell Me Your Story project. I think you must have received quite a lot of submissions, and the response was very good. I know from Arunachal also there's been quite a few writers, very good young writers who have responded. So that is a great thing, I think. It's quite an achievement. So thank you for that also and for bringing us together this evening.
Thank you so much. Actually, it's a great joy for me as well because Northeast is one region that I'm very fond of. Goes without saying that I'm very fond of your writing. And it was a great pleasure to have your story prompt to go with this particular project. I will go to the contributors now. Debarati Chakraborty, if I may begin with you. Debarati, why don't you give us a little brief about your story and introduce us to your story before I go to Subi.
Sure. Thank you, Coral. So my story, I've written a story on Arunachal Pradesh, to be precise. And one interesting facet that I would, want to bring up, something I was also discussing with you just before going live. I have never been to Arunachal Pradesh. I have been to other Northeast states, but I have never been to Arunachal Pradesh. But, what really propelled me to write about Arunachal Pradesh is the amount of, material that I have read on Arunachal so long, till date. It has really fascinated me a lot. Because what really stands out, for this particular state is, apart from its beauty, its diversity, the flora and fauna, the mighty Himalayas, I felt the Tibetan influence. It's a very enigmatic land, so as to say. It's completely shrouded in mystery, which makes for really good stories. So that is the very reason I chose Arunachal Pradesh as a state where I wanted to write upon. And the story was actually a facet of my imagination. So to give you a little bit about my story, it is about a small boy, Rinjin, who is all of, 13 or 14. So he is training as a lama. He's a very young lama at the Tawang monastery. And he is home for the Losar festivities. Losar is one of the harvesting festivities in Arunachal. And this particular day, he is traveling back to the monastery from his hometown, which is a very remote corner in Arunachal called the Thembang village. So it's a very beautiful village and, in idyllic surroundings. And he makes this travel from Thembang to Tawang. And he actually, because he's a boy from the mountains, he usually takes the mountainous terrain. But on this particular day, he thought that, let me take a different route. Why not experiment and explore a little bit? And also to give you a little bit about this boy, he's not like the usual boys of his age. He's not playful. He's not very, frivolous. He's a perceptive kid. So he is calm. He absorbs things and he tries to find a greater meaning to life in general. So he takes this different path through the Himalayas, and he has certain experiences which might seem bizarre to the common man, experiences that actually change him forever. So basically the story, it has a metaphorical angle to it. It's not just a story, it shouldn't be taken literally, because I feel all the journeys that we make in a lifetime are actually a journey inward, because at the end of the journey we change a little bit with every journey, with the experiences that we undertake. So the same with Rinchen, and through this boy, we come to know about, the different possibilities that our human mind, which might, the mind might not be aware of, or which might seem incredible to the human mind. There are certain possibilities above and beyond this mundane existence that we lead. So which Rinchen makes just because he has an open mind. So that is what I have tried to bring out in my story. And you have to read it to know really what are these experiences and how it changes him forever. And you will also know whether it changes you, at the end of it. So that is a little bit about my story.
That's beautiful. Subi, if I may invite you to introduce your story.
Thank you, Coral. First of all, I just want to say that I belong to East Kameng. It's a district in the western part of Arunachal, and in my village, like my mother's elder brother and my father's elder brother both are priests. So I grew up in an environment where I saw priests chanting and doing their priestly duties. So actually my story, The Last Priest, the inception of this idea came when I went to visit my village with my parents, and we went to visit my mother's family, and there they were having this some rituals, and I came to realize that the priest who was doing the ritual, he was actually the last priest of that village. After him, no one had learned the rituals of priesthood, and he was the last priest. So the inception of this story came from that visit. And basically, the story, The Last Priest, is a story about a day in a priest's life who carries on carrying his priestly duties amidst the gradual cultural appropriation of our animist religion, which is called Doni Polo, due to the growth of churches and due to influence of Hinduism, Buddhism, and other modern practices. And in this story, that particular day, he gets visited by his childhood friend who went to study, and the priest couldn't study because he had orthodox parents who believed that the village way of life was more revered than going to the cities to attend schools. So that particular visit from his childhood friend brings out painful memories from the past. So The Last Priest is the story which compares the life between being a priesthood, stay in the village, or being an educated man and travel out to the cities. So
Okay.
that's it.
Thanks a lot, Subi. Mamang, I
Mhm.
would request you to share some feedback since you have read the stories. We would love to have your feedback as well.
Oh, yes, Coral. I thought both the stories were really.
Okay, before Mamang comes back,
Mhm.
I will tell you a little bit about my reaction to the stories. I
Mhm.
felt that both the stories are dealing with some kind of binding that we all face somewhere in our lives. We are stuck, and that has fabulously come out in both the stories, where something is stuck, and someone is trying to break out of those rules. Mamang is back, and
The
let me.
net, the connection is
It's okay, Mamang. Please
the net
continue.
connection is a bit, erratic. Yeah. No, I thought both the stories were really fabulous because when I did the prompt, I wasn't sure which way it would go. But I think Debarati also has come back with so much knowledge of the area. I was wondering if you have ever lived here, Debarati. Have you been in Arunachal ever?
No, no, Mamang. That was what I was, informing our viewers in the very beginning. So I have never been to Arunachal Pradesh, Mamang. So Arunachal has always been, it's something that I've read about in books. I've read vivid details about the Tawang Monastery
Okay.
and the beautiful, the
Hmm.
enigma that is associated with Arunachal, with the Tawang Monastery, the Tibetan influence that it has. I've read about Madam Alexandra David Neal, who had been to this place and who had
Right,
carried
right.
Thumo to Oriental, spirituality to the West. So all this have fascinated me so much that I thought, why not weave a story around Arunachal? That is the reason for choosing Arunachal, Mamang. And I wish I'll definitely visit the place once.
No, that's wonderful because saw you have chosen Thembang, and because I lived in the Tawang area for almost 7 years in what was undivided Kameng district. So this was, I thought, Are, you're writing about, Losar celebrations and then, the priestly rituals. And I thought it was a very moving story, because the second son is always taken by the monastery. It's still a current practice. And also, just the atmosphere that you created with the story prompt about this person who returns every year, who's a mysterious stranger. That was quite moving, I thought. It's a beautiful story, and you put it together, brought it together without having been here. So that is a great feat of imagination, but it's also authentic. So the two combine very well. And I don't want to sound like, a lecture on writing and, every writer has their own creative instincts and you're allowed to imagine. Subi Taba, of course, I know her. We've
Hello,
met
ma'am.
and she's a very promising writer. Hi, Subi.
Hi, ma'am.
And the Last Priest, it's a very relevant story for today, because when actually the state is standing at the crossroads and so many things are
Mm.
changing. So at the same time, it's not like preachy, it's not rigid, it's not indigenous. That kind of coloring is not in the story. It's a story told that you want to read from beginning to end about this visitor and the two friends, how they meet. And it is also very moving when he looks back and how angry he was with his father
Mhm.
and the mother there in between. This happens a lot of times, not only for the last priest, but in many cases when you're moving from rural to urban, or it's really about dreams, and ultimately you sort of come back full circle and you carry on with your priorities. Someone has to be left behind. Someone has to be left forward. This was the kind of message I got. It's very beautiful, Subi. And
Thank you, ma'am.
Debarati's story also is very good. So thanks to Coral,
Thank
I
you,
think
ma'am.
that, you have put this potential actually and bring it out in a story, what might have been thoughts or feelings in the writer's mind.
Actually, Mamang, when I saw your prompt, there were other raconteurs who had given us story prompts. So my thought towards your prompt was like I was taken back to my school days when there were some maths teachers who would give a simple calculation: 2 plus 2, you write 4, and then there would be some who would write 7 plus 2 minus 5, and so you will have to kind of do a back calculation. It would be something where you will have to apply your brain a lot more than otherwise. So your prompt was not something which someone can just instantly put it, but there will need a lot of thought process in putting that thought together. Mamang will come back, but if Subi and Debarati, if you could tell us, what were your thoughts when you got Mamang's story prompt? You guys have made a brave choice because her prompt was the most difficult one.
When I actually read Mamang's prompt, the time when I saw the advertisement for this competition and the time I had conceived that idea, they were in the simultaneous moments. So when I started writing first, and then I was thinking, how can I include Mamang Mam's prompt inside my story? I was waiting for that moment. At first, I was thinking maybe I'll start with the beginning or end. But when I started writing the story, I just weaved it in between when the friend is waiting for the priest in the bus and the priest is withholding himself so because he has his family responsibilities. So I was like a bit surprised also, like how it organically formed itself. The prompt fitted inside the story. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. Debarati, why don't you take
So,
us about
yeah.
your
As for me, Coral, to be very honest, I probably wouldn't have been able to write, on the other prompts, the given by the other raconteurs, because the moment I saw Mamang's prompt, I thought that it was something very different, something that calls for, see, a story is all about, writing about something which is going to really intrigue people. Because we all love reading about things that we don't know about. We all love knowing about things which is out there, and which is something that is not involved or included in our daily life, which is above and beyond the mundane. So Mamang's prompt actually called for a story of that sort. Somewhere he could, where he could really spin a tale which is very intriguing, which is bizarre, which is extraordinary. So it had all the elements of a real extraordinary story. So that is the reason I really felt thrilled to pick up her prompt. But then, yes, it was difficult to think of something which would, because I've never been to Arunachal. So I had to do some research on Arunachal, on the Monpa tribes on which my story was based. So I did some research over the internet. I looked up YouTube videos. I saw what their regular life was. And then I found, I'm really glad I did this, because if I hadn't done this, I wouldn't have known that such a wonderful tribe really existed. Such wonderful people really existed, because India is diverse. There are so many tribes, there are so many customs, there are so many ways of life, there are so many ways of belief. So the moment I saw this tribe, automatically these things came into my mind one by one. and I wrote about it. So this prompt itself was very interesting, so as to say, Coral. That is the reason, it really prompted me to write something which would be a bit removed from a literal or a very, a mundane life. So that is the reason I, chose this prompt in the first place.
Absolutely. The prompt was definitely challenging. I will read out the prompt before I come to Mamang on it. So Mamang's prompt was, when the news broke the town was thrown into turmoil. Who broke the news? What was happening? When? Where? The questions were prompted by the appearance of a nameless stranger who passed through these mountains and valleys for a brief season every year. Come on, what are we waiting for? Let's go, a young man shouted. The people of the town looked at one another. Some hung back, but others took up the cry, and soon a crowd had gathered. Let's go, they cried, eager to greet the return of a visitor who arrived like a messenger from another world, carrying words and letters and all manner of thoughts, scattering them like seeds across the land. Mamang, what was your thought behind offering this particular prompt? It is indeed a very beautiful and a very challenging prompt.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked the prompt. I thought the seeds would, really scatter and one could pick up. As I said, I wouldn't know which way it could have gone, and then we get these beautiful stories. So that's nice. I did toy a little bit with a kind of crime fiction kind of beginning, because I love detective fiction. So I started something with high heels, and then I was imagining the Pinewood Hotel in Shillong. Then I thought, oh no, but this is a bit, maybe I'll try something different. So I did have 2-3 prompts, and then I thought the stranger, appearing every season might be more open. There would be more options because you're just throwing seeds out into the wind, sort of. And I'm so glad Debarati and Subi have picked this up, And I think you must have quite a lot of good stories, Coral, for the anthology. This will be in an anthology, is it?
Yes. It is already published. It is a digital book available on Amazon, and anybody can download across the world.
Oh, okay, on Amazon.
Yes.
The audio
so, Mamang, I think you are very disappointed,
yeah,
right? Because none of the stories were crime fictions.
Subi, I can't. I didn't catch that.
She is saying that was it a disappointment for you because none of the stories were crime fictions?
Sorry?
None of the stories
the audio is bouncing a lot, so okay.
Yes, don't worry.
Yeah.
So none of the stories were crime fictions. Did that disappoint you?
None of this story, what?
Were crime fictions.
I don't know, the audio is just science fiction.
Crime
Yes, science fiction. Crime fiction.
Yes.
Crime fiction.
Yes.
Has someone written a crime fiction story in this?
No, they haven't.
In this group? No,
they haven't. So we were asking that, was it disappointing for you?
What was disappointing for me?
The fact that nobody had written a crime fiction.
No, not at all. Because that was a different prompt. I had started differently. But I think short story writing, it's really the most difficult. I write novels, and I think novels you can expand and you have all the circumstantial. But the short story, you have to fit in a whole world, a whole life. So many thoughts and feelings are compressed into this. It's more like what the writers, Latin American writers often say, the short story, because for them it's such a great genre that it's like a river. You have to be able to see both banks. It's like that. Novels, okay, you're out in the open sea. You can float, you can bounce, you can go dip in troughs. You're far away from the shore. But with a short story, you're never really that far away. You're always pulling back. And I think that is where it's so difficult, because to be honest, I've been kind of like stuck with the opening paragraph for a short story for about maybe the last 1.5 years. I just can't get past that opening paragraph. I have to think, I'm really not a short story writer. Let me try a collection, but it's taking a long time. So this is wonderful what I was reading, and definitely I look forward to reading all the Tell Me Your stories.
Thank you so much. I will send you the PDFs. Before I come back to Mamang for some storytelling tips, I would like to go to Debarati and Subi for two very different topics. Debarati, I would request you to tell the audience what were the books and what were the stuff that you read out in order to get such vivid picture of the Northeast, even though you haven't been there. I ask you this because those books can be a great source of research other than the stories of this anthology. So why don't you tell the audience a little about your research phase?
Okay, so that's an interesting question, Coral. So basically, my research just for the story prompt was definitely on Arunachal because once I zeroed in on Arunachal, that I would actually write about Arunachal. I had looked up the internet and the YouTube on what Arunachal really looked like. But even before that, I'd like to tell you, what really interested me in Northeast or the mountains, to be more precise. So basically, there are a lot of books on Himalayas that I had because mountains have always been a part of my mind and soul because I've made a lot of travels in my lifetime to the mountains, and every time I've been there, I felt it's something that is more than just nature or just flora and fauna. It is probably something that has changed my personality in some way or the other. So and especially it's because of the Himalayas, because I feel that it's not just a range of mountains, it has more to it. There is something there's a lot of perceptions about the Himalayas that even a lot of authors have written about in the past. So I've read about the different, it's not just Arunachal, it's about the presence of Himalayas in different parts of our country, in different parts of India. Like I am a very very great follower of Ruskin Bond, who has always written about mountains, who is someone who had come back from his hometown England, who never went back because he was so much in love with the mountains and he was so much in love with the Himalayas. So I really love his writing because it's very simple. I read Paul Brunton, who wrote about, it's not just a story about mountains, it's all about the mysticism associated with India, because my story, more than the mountains and the nature and the perception, is also something to do with the enigma, the places that are shrouded in mystery, the mysticism associated with ancient India, the Tibetan influence over India. So I read Paul Brunton's Journey to Secret India, which really fascinated me. I read the autobiography of Madam Alexandra David Neal, who was the first European. At that point in time, foreigners were forbidden to enter Tibet. So she made her first entry into India, and she went to Tibet, and she carried a lot of Oriental philosophy with her back to England. So all these books I had read, which had really interested me about the Himalayas, and also I had, read about. I also have read a lot of modern writers, including Mamang Dai as well. I've read her work, her poems, which she has a very very lucid style. The way she has described Arunachal in her poetry, in her prose, it's really really very vivid and it's very beautiful. So once I was very sure that I wanted to write about the mountains, I wanted to write about Himalayas, I wanted to write about our ancient practices, I wanted to write about the mysticism in India. I picked up, I started doing research on Arunachal Pradesh because I was, like I said, I was very interested with the Lama practices that happen there. I was very interested in what all happens in a monastery. I've been to different places. I've been to the hills, like Duars or Darjeeling, the ones that are in West Bengal. I'm more frequently visited those places, and I've seen monasteries out there also. So it has always interested me as to what these monasteries hold back. It's very, if you see a monastery, if you see lamas, they wear a peculiar dress, and it's very, very intriguing. Why have they chosen this kind of life? What is out there that they find so interesting? So I started, really doing research on the tribes of Arunachal. So there were different kinds of tribes that I did my research on, and finally I chose this Monpa tribes because the Monpas are the lamas in the Tawang. Actually, they are chosen mostly from Monpa families, and mostly the Monpa people are frequenters in the Tawang region. So I started, delving more and more into their daily life, what they eat, how they lead their lives. So all those videos I actually looked up, YouTube and Google, and the different kind of writings that have happened on them, the different kind of videos that were out there, which really describe their lifestyle. And also there are very beautiful documentaries, on lamas. And if you get a chance, you do watch them, and it's very, very interesting because it's nowhere, close to the kind of lives we lead. So all of them are very, very interesting and very intriguing, and they definitely have good elements for a beautiful story. So those were basically the kind of research I did, and I'm really glad, as I said, I'm really glad I did that, because that was where I came to know about Tentok and Gendome, the buttermilk the butter tea that they have with a lot of salt. And because we usually don't take tea with salt, right? We take either we love our own Darjeeling tea, maybe with a little speck of sugar, but we never can imagine tea with salt. So all those different kind of customs really, really interested me so much, and I try to incorporate them as much as possible in my story. And also different, the different names that they have. They're the names, even, the Thupten Temman, Wangchu, Limden, and all those different kind of names also I came across, which was very, very different from the kind of names, or that we usually have or we usually come across. So I felt this is a part which is very, very unexplored, and they still have so many different things that we are not really aware of. So these things need to be highlighted. Northeast needs to come into the forefront, so that more and more people really can, know about the diversity that lies in its bosom. So that, in a nutshell, Coral, that was the kind of research I did.
That is a very, very interesting answer, and a lot of things for us, all of us, to learn the way you have done that job. Subi, you are based in Arunachal. I would like to ask you something very pertinent, that what are the few things that must be written about? I mean, there are a lot of stories, a lot of writers. Some of them are friends to me, who are doing a lot of work on Northeast. There are fiction as well as non-fiction work that is happening. What are some of the few causes or some of the few elements that you think should feature in stories, fiction or non-fiction? And what are those things that must come out again and again and again, so that people wake up far more to that region and understand what makes it?
So Coral, when I started like when I was young, the most of the books we read were either British or American authors, and in India also most of the stories and books we read were written by Indian authors with a very different context than where I grew up. And in Arunachal, I think during when I was growing up, only Mamang Ma'am was the writer who was writing on Arunachal. In fact, I was very much influenced by some of her early poetry books like River Poems, and even some of her novels like Legends Pensam. So but since in between, like I read a bit, but then I was a very studious kind of student, so I didn't have much time to work on my poetry or stories during my college days. So after I got my job, I had decided to give my like some part of my life fully to writing. So I started reading this Southeast Asian writers, mostly some Chinese and some Thai writers, who write about their local traditional stories, mystical stories, which has a lot of similarities between my culture. Like Arunachal is a part of India, of course, but our culture and the way how we grew up has more similarities with Southeast Asian culture. So, reading Indian authors and then reading Southeast Asian authors, the difference had made me realize that stories from our region can also come out interesting. For example, last few months, I wrote a story about. A tiger turning into a man, and actually it won this new Asian short story competition in 2020. So actually that gave
Congratulations.
me, yeah, thank you. Actually that gave me more like inspiration to write more on our culture. So so did I answer your question? So
Certainly.
these things can be done because a lot of writers haven't come out of Arunachal, so we can write about our mystical stories. Like there are so many stories inside my head about magical mountains, about the different ghosts that we have in our tribe. Like in my tribe we have ghosts which are women who eats child. There are ghosts like who are very short and lives in the mountains. There are ghosts where there are ghosts of people who dies in accidents. So these things are very interesting and very different from the mainland Indian culture. So I think if one can explore all this, a lot of uh, folk tales and a lot of imaginary stories can come out from the region.
Subi, you have given us a very important story prompt, which is about ghosts. The ghosts of the Northeast itself is an amazing name. And I am connected with a lot of horror writers, and I'm sure that
Mm.
they are hearing it. They are hearing it, let
Mm.
me tell you. So thank you
And
so
then
much for pointing that out. Yeah.
yeah. And I just wanted to make one
Yes,
point,
please.
like especially when I go visit my village, there are so many old people telling so many stories. Like there is a mountain, there is some kind of magical flower there. If you touch it, you'll go mad. That kind of stories. And if you bring that flower to your house also, the flower is magical and it will disappear on its own. So that kind of stories are very interesting. And I think because in Arunachal is such a big state and there are so many folk tales and ghost stories and even origin stories in different parts of the district, which can, if it can be explored, a lot of diverse stories can come out.
Wonderfully
That's
said,
it.
Subi. I totally hear it that why isn't the magic mysticism of Northeast not being explored enough? Totally hear it, and I totally look for it. Someone must do that. Mamang, one question which I cannot not ask you. Why don't you give us some writing tips about, I mean, when someone is writing a story, be it a long story or a short story, a novel or any other kind of creative nonfiction, what are some of the most important writing must do's and must not do's which should be followed, which are a crime to be ignorant about? Would you like to tell us something?
I don't know if I got your question right. I think this is about some do's and don'ts for writing, is it?
Yes, yes, yes. I am seeking writing
Some
tips
do's
from
and
you. Yes.
no, see, in fact, I was just going to talk about Tembang because in Debarati's story, you know, Tembang is a very historic place. I know you've done a lot of research. It is in the UNESCO heritage site, along with another place in Arunachal Pradesh, the Tali Valley also. So it's an old fortress. And the Munpas, of course, in Arunachal, we have, you know, the animist culture of the sun and moon worship, Doni Polo. Like in the story of Subi Taba, we have shaman priests. And in the body of the shaman, he is the custodian of all our literature, of all our classical routes of migration. All the stories are chanted by him, actually. So he is a very important figure. You know, the priest, he can communicate. I know Subi is talking about ghosts, and this is all, you know, the whole pantheon of gods and goddesses, deities, or evil spirits. Now, all this is between man and nature. So I think this is a great resource, you know, mythological lore, as Subi and a lot of young writers are doing now, because for us in Arunachal Pradesh, we don't have a script. We are only speech communities. So everything is in the oral tradition. That is why the priest becomes so important. He is the person who remembers, you know, all this lore that has been passed down through several generations. Now, among the Monpa, they use the Tibetan script, and they are the Mahayana sect, the Gelugpa sect of Buddhism, as you rightly have put in your story. And then we have in eastern Arunachal Pradesh, this is just a little backgrounder for us.
Okay, I'm sure she'll come back in a while. And Mahayana is, I think, Mahayana, she was talking about Mahayana, that is that sect of Buddhism that treats Buddha as God, right? Hinayana is the other one, which treats Buddha as a wise, learned person, but not God. It treats Buddha as human. And Mahayana is the sect that treats, yes, Subi, Mamang is that.
In eastern Arunachal Pradesh, again, we have the Theravada Buddhism, okay, which is more aligned to the Burmese. So these are different groups. And I think that is why literature is important, because it is going to, it is the agent of transmission, you know, of sharing people, places, the graphical location, of course. You know, everyone says Arunachal is the destination, it's pristine, it's beautiful. But there's more than that. Behind the geography, there are all these stories, be it oral or written in the Buddhist script. Thereby using the
Mamang, can you hear us? I think she's frozen. So I think she was talking about different sect, religious
Oral,
and
yeah,
tribal
oral
sects,
literature.
right? Oral literature, the
Yeah.
traditions of oral literature, and various sects that appear, the subsects actually, within one community, one religious or tribal community, or any other kind of division in humans, and how their culture has influenced each other. Subi, what is the proportion of inter-community, collaboration? It could be, I mean, okay, Mamang is back, so let's hear from her before we discuss this. Mamang?
Are we back on again?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you are back. Please do.
So that is what I was talking about, So with this, tell me your story. This is also bringing out many things, or putting many things together. The entire northeast region, where the kingfisher sings, is it's actually very diverse,
Yes.
and it's not one kind of monoculture, big tribal belt. It's not like that. It's all. In fact, it's like one of the most multi-ethnic and diverse regions maybe in the world. We have so many different things because most of our area is like also international boundary. But literature as such is kind of still in the nascent.
Okay, before Mamang comes back, Subi, if you could tell us a little bit about the cultural mixture that is happening, because we understand 8 states are not one. The languages are not one. They are very diverse in themselves. Does it happen, or is it very isolated?
In some districts, I think Ma'am is back.
No, she is yet to be back. You can continue
So,
once she is back.
so some districts are very far flung in Arunachal. There are no good road conditions. And talking about the inter collaboration with the other states, I think all the states of Northeast, we are very much close to Assam, very much dependent on Assam, whether it be transportation or whether it be the airport. In Arunachal we don't have airport, so we have to travel to Guwahati to take an airport. And then culture and origin wise, I think it is very interesting. Like Debarati has also said that the northeast whole region is shrouded in mystery, because in Arunachal particularly we don't have any written records. Everything, like our origin story, is a subject on which a lot of research can be done, because we have like a few researchers who have said that we have originated from the Sino-Tibetan, and some even propose that from the Burmese. So this whole research is very interesting. And like the whole of Northeast, like Manipuris, they have very different culture. They are Hindus, and then the Naga people, they are Christians. And Arunachal, we have Buddhism, we have animism, and we have Christianity also. And Guwahati, again, Assam, it's very different culture with a mixture of tribal and plain people. So all the states are very different to each other.
Absolutely.
Even Sikkim, yeah.
Absolutely. Mamang is back, so if we can continue with what she was saying. Mamang, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but broken up. So I think the core of that is what I was saying, that this project has brought together many things that the Northeast, I think Subi was saying, is so diverse, even in ethnic groups, linguistic groups. And Debarati has done a lot of research. We are at the stage, because I said it's a speech community. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, very much.
Can you hear me?
It's absolutely fine. We can hear you.
People are still doing a lot of research into origins of the roots of migration, also language studies, departments of tribal studies. But I have a thing about research. If you want to write, if you want to be a creative writer, I think you have to draw the line about how much research you're going to do. You want to write a story, definitely you need to know the background. I was a journalist before this, so I have a kind of investigative nose. I want to know more and more, and it's interesting. Research is very interesting, but you can go the whole mile and kind of sometimes maybe overdo it. You want to write a story, you don't need to be burdened with too much research. You just need enough. I think you'll know when you reach that point, and then you can take off and imagine the rest. You can bring it together, and that in a way sometimes it works better for keeping something alive. Because it's more interesting. More, it's more interesting than, say, true academic research. Academic research will appeal to certain people. Physics, astrophysics, all this kind of thing, Carl Sagan, Kepler, this really appeals to me, but I kind of surf along, I like to read about the supernatural or mysticism, spirituality, but because I'm going to write, I don't want to take too much, I have to leave that space. I don't know if you're getting what I mean, but you need that space where you just have to have the freedom of writing, the words have to journey on their own. You're not going to use all the props of academic research.
I totally get it, Mamang.
That is my take on.
The most important thing that you mentioned was that it is important to be grammatically correct, but not to the extent that the grammar spoils the story. So I completely get your point extremely well. Mamang, thank you so much for, I understand that you have been in a difficult internet situation, but in spite of that, you have...
I know, Subi was telling you about, no airports, the lights might just go off. It's raining here, actually. It's quite stormy. So.
Yeah, I can understand.
But anyway, it's been a pleasure, really.
I can understand. Northeast is something which I and Debarati definitely want to visit sometime. I don't know when I get to do
you
it.
We
are doing it in
you must. And if you guys come, let me know.
Oh yes, I will definitely. I just want to, find out where exactly my imagination fits in, because, like as Mamang said, I did my research and then I took the leap. And rest was based on my imagination. So I definitely would like to visit that place sometime and see where exactly my imagination fits in, whether it is true, whatever I've imagined about the place in my mind's eye, how true is that, or is it totally different? So definitely I would like to visit Arunachal sometime, Subi.
Yeah, Debarati, even me, I haven't visited the Tawang part. So maybe, we can add each other in Facebook, and when the time is right, we can plan a trip there, because I haven't visited Tawang Monastery yet. Yeah.
Oh, yes, you must.
Want to visit.
Debarati,
oh, yes, we should do this together,
definitely. If you visit Tawang, do send us a photograph, which we can also put up, because that is the result of this conversation, which I totally claim here.
Now I'm all the more, inspired to visit Tawang Coral, because, just after COVID, maybe once we have an end to COVID, we can, me and Subi can plan our trips to Arunachal and really delve inside the lives of lamas in the Tawang monastery, and then send our live updates from there to you, so that, really you can post it on Tell Me Your Story, and let the whole world know about it.
Absolutely. I would really welcome that.
I'm more interested in Tawang because the 1962 Chinese war between India and China, it was fought there. So I'm very interested to see the place where there is one Kuswan Singh, or I forgot the name. Some ghat is there where there was that particular army stayed for like overnight or 1-2 days. Shielding against the Chinese army from attacking the Indian region. So that is one of the reasons I wanted to...
Right. The Indo-Chinese War actually has, a lot of mysteries associated with it, Subi. So there are a lot of stories about it, why the war actually happened. A lot of people believe that it is actually to invade the, hidden territories in Indian occupied parts of Tibet, which are now probably parts of Tibet. But there are also parts in Arunachal Pradesh, which are still very, very shrouded in mystery. And in fact, the whole Western world wants to know about it. There are so many many books written about it. There's so many Western visitors that, who made their visits in India just to know more about the mysticism associated with Tawang, the mysticism that's associated with Buddhism, with the Tibetan culture in general. So that definitely, there are lots of elements for good stories and lots of elements for good, exploration, Subi, for that matter. So we should definitely plan a visit sometime.
Yeah,
Certainly,
definitely.
I look
After let
forward
the
to
COVID
that.
end.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think Mamang has lost her connection now. I can't see her back. So I couldn't say bye to her, which I'll do separately over phone. But thanks to both of you for making time. And it was a wonderful time I had this evening. Thank you so much, Subi and
Same here,
Debarati.
Coral. Thank you so much for hosting this session and giving us a chance to interact with each other. So I made lovely friends with you and Subi and Mamang, definitely. And we surely are going to stay in touch.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you,
And for the audience, Subi, yes. And
Yeah,
for
thank
the
you, Coral,
audience,
for this meetup, this online meetup, and also for putting up that anthology based in Northeast. It was very. I'm looking forward to read that anthology.
Yeah,
And
well,
thank you for
thank you,
putting
Swin.
it up.
Sorry.
I think Ma'am is back.
yeah.
Okay.
Mamang, I wanted to thank you. I thought
Yeah,
that
it's
your
really
connection has gone.
everything just went off. Actually, it
I
must
can
be me
understand.
because Subi is not having any problem. But it must
Yeah.
be, it's this technology and something is happening. Anyway,
Could be one of the
tell
ghosts
me.
that Subi was
So this
threatening
is.
us with. Could be one of the ghosts that Subi was threatening us with.
Ma'am is
So basically
Ma'am
it
is going
highlights the
out in
I
commercial
hope
inaccessibility
it's
of
breaks.
a.
Northeast even more. It highlights the inaccessibility of Northeast
I
even
hope.
more, isn't it?
Yeah, so for the audience,
Sorry.
please, no, we are talking to the audience. That audience, please download where the Kingfisher sings, an anthology with stories set in the northeast of India. There are many stories, many beautiful stories, and there are a few which is based on story prompt given by Mamang Dai, out of which Debarati, Chakraborty, and Subi Taba has written stories among many others. Uh, Thanks a lot, Mamang Dai, Subi Taba, and Debarati Chakraborty for taking out time this evening. It really means a lot, and we had a wonderful time of learning, sharing, hearing. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Coral.
Coral. Thank you,
Thank you. Thank
everyone.
you,
And
Coral.
good
Bye,
night,
everyone,
everyone.
Bye.
and congratulations, Subi
Thank
and
you so much.
Thank
Debarati. Thank you,
you, ma'am.
Coral. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.